All right. So recently, I became interested in understanding the relationship between culture and geography, knowledge and geography, and norm and geography. And so I went back to, and I started to think about it from the perspective of critical realism. So I went to look at the work of Dave Elder-Vass, who has written something about norm curing, but from the perspective of critical realism. So, David Elder-Vass, so he agrees that curing, for example, is a Western culture that is not universally observed. Now, so I'm going to just quickly read what he says in his book. So he said, there are many situations in some contemporary societies in which individuals spontaneously form queues. A queue, according to Dave Elder-Vass, is an interaction group. So interaction group, he's talking about a group that is formed based on temporary shared interests. So he says, a queue is an interaction group whose formation is prompted by two main sets of factors. So one, he said, the participants understand queuing and are committed to observing the norms it entails. And then two, he said, the situation itself is one in which queuing is appropriate and is recognizable as such by the participants. This is sometimes aided by the physical setting, geography. So props such as signs saying queue here, or ropes marking out an area in which to queue. Now, he continues to say, when individuals do not conform to these norms in situations where others expect them to, they are likely to face strong negative sanctions, particularly from those who are already participating in the queue, but often also from those staffing the entrance point. And this you can observe in a lot of situations, maybe for vaccination or in the developing world where people go to queue for some services. So, a queue may be an interaction group according to Elder-Vass, but queuing as such is a normative social institution endorsed and enforced by the usual normative mechanisms. So this, in other words, according to Elder-Vass, a norm cycle for queuing and the power of the norm cycle tends to influence individuals to form queues, to observe the norms of queuing within the queue, and to endorse and enforce queuing norms in queuing situations. These norms also help us to make sense of the situation and of the behavior of other actors within it. Now, this is a quick conclusion from him. So he's saying, what causal role does the queue itself play beyond the causal contribution of the institution of queuing and the contributions of the participants as individual agents? Now, one reflection he provides is that one contribution would seem to be towards an understanding of the situation. When we see a queue, this makes a contribution to our realization that this is a queuing situation. The causal consequence is that the existence of a queue situation is more obvious. Now he says, furthermore, the existence of the queue contributes causally to our decision as to where to queue. When we perceive that a queue exists somewhere, we know that we should join it at the back rather than, for example, starting a queue of our own or trying to join the existing queue in the middle. This causal contribution of the queue results from its consisting of a certain type of parts, for example, humans, organized by certain relations standing in line adjacent to a service point, giving it the emergent property of being recognizable as an insistence of curing. So now if you look at what he's saying, it's very clear from his argument that so when you arrive at the location and you see people curing based on the circumstance, you feel compelled, you want to adapt to the norm of that particular situation, of that particular context at the time, to form and join the queue, and you want to behave well. Now, the reason why I thought of this in terms of culture and geography, I'm wondering why, and as someone from Africa, I was traveling on a flight from Amsterdam to Lagos via Addis Ababa. So at in Amsterdam at the airport, the passengers on the flight were predominantly Africans with a few Westerners. So when it was time to embark, we all queued politely. It took a very long time, but the queue was long. Everybody was patient, and we got on the flight. We landed in Addis Ababa, and after 2 hours, we were getting on another flight to leave from Addis Ababa to Lagos. This time, we were the same people, predominantly Africans, and a few Westerners. But there was a shift in the behavior of the crowd, the passengers. The same people I've observed in Amsterdam who patiently queued, this time in Addis Ababa, as soon as the flight calls that it was time to embark, everybody rushed to the entrance, like fighting the same people that I saw behave in a completely different way in Amsterdam. So I started to wonder, why did we behave differently in Amsterdam, and then 24 hours later, we are the same people in the same group, only at a different airport, and then we are behaving differently. So what is the situation here? Now, I found it very, very interesting, but also I try to look at other issues. I don't know if that is related. Why an individual? I think the interesting thing is, so norm and geography, culture and geography. Why we change our behaviors in different contexts. So it's the same. I was having a conversation with a political sociologist, and we were chatting. Why somebody will commit a crime here, or will say he wouldn't commit a crime, and then a few steps from here, he will commit a crime. Maybe, for example, people who shoplift. You know, you are in the grocery store here, and you behave well, you didn't steal. But you move in the next one, the same things, and then you decide to steal. What is that whole influence that is changing our behavior from one geography to another? And I'm interested in this as well because it's the same with knowledge. I've been reading a guy, Brennan, who talks about how knowledge is gained and how we give meanings to situations. And he says, he argues that the process of meaning making is inherently situated in cultural and social realities. So he takes the view that the process of assigning meanings to things in different settings on particular occasions involves situating encounters with the world in their appropriate cultural context. So Brennan and Elder-Vass, in fact, they are telling me that geography plays a role in the way we behave. And they are also saying that culture plays a role in the way we behave. But then why, when we change, I guess the point I'm pondering over is, why do we change when we, in terms of our cultural behaviors, in terms of norms? Is it driven by enforced regulations in the context? So it's something that I am thinking from the perspective of critical realism that I'm interested in exploring.